on 211th Street to the west, Springfield Boulevard to the east, 48th Avenue to the north, and the Long Island Expressway to the south. And this is our mall and iconic structures meeting. And it's a very, very important meeting, and we're so happy that you are here. We have Bayside Live TV televising the event, and Gregg Sullivan. We have representatives from Community Board 11. We have Christine Hayter, Eileen Miller is on the board and also on the board of directors. We have the board of directors of the Bayside Hills Civic Association almost en masse for the first time. We have our borough president, Melinda Katz. We have Neely Rosick, our state assemblywoman. We have Barry Gudenchik, who is our city councilman. We have Luigi Galano, our community affairs officer. And we have Joseph Block from Parks. We have Albert Silvestri of the Department of Transportation. We're expecting Rich DePetta. Is he coming, Albert?
No.
Okay, we have Albert. Okay, that's great.
Birthday.
And it's just a wonderful thing that this civic association, for some reason, some fortunate reason, is able to have liaisons with all of the city agencies. The last time we had a meeting, we were able to bring here Anthony Uliano of the Department of Buildings. And we have a pipeline, and we're very, very fortunate that we have a pipeline. And it will continue as best we possibly continue it going. Now, we have sitting here at the dais, Mr. Gudenchik. Could you sit over here also?
Come on, Jessica.
All right.
Plenty of room.
Barry Gudenchik and Jessica Douglas of the city's Community Assistance Unit, Community Affairs Unit, and all of these people are responsible for making this meeting possible. They work together, and they did a wonderful job. And so, we usually begin our meetings with a grateful thanks that we have our police department available to give their regular police reports. So, I would like to ask for Luigi to please come up and tell us what's the latest news at the 111 precinct. Luigi.
Good evening, everybody. If you don't know me, I'm Officer Galano from the 111 Community Affairs. I'm glad to report, with our help from Nassau County, that the two robberies that we had in our precinct of the subway on Springfield and also by the Clearview, we were able to arrest that robbery for that. So, glad to report that. Just to go over some of the statistics of the week. For the week, we had a great week. We were down 40% of total crimes. Last year, this time, we had 9. This year, we had 9, as opposed to last year, we had 15, which is a total decrease of 40%. 28-day period, total index crimes, we had a decrease of 10%. Last year, we had a total of, 28-day period, we had a total crime of 50 as opposed to 56, so total decrease of 10%.
A little louder, please.
I'm sorry, what?
A little louder.
I know, I have a cold, so I'm doing the best I can. We had a great week. The 28-day period, we had a total of 5 robberies. Where last year we had 3, which was an increase by 2. But like I said, we did have associated with that, most of those, there's only 1 outstanding robbery collar that we're still out and about with. Year to date, we are up 17% as opposed to last year. A lot of our crime that's being driven here in the 111 precinct is credit card charges that are fraudulent. A lot of times with the debit cards as well too, people's accounts being compromised. So my best advice is with using the ATM cards is that if you are going to take a withdrawal from the ATM, to make sure you do a physical check of the ATM and make sure there's no skimming devices on it, yank and tug and pull at it to make sure there's no devices on that. After you do put your ATM card, you do think it's secure, to also put your hand over the keypad and put your PIN number in as well too. So just in case there is some sort of secondary camera device, you know, that it can't be seen through the camera. I'm glad also to report too, I know we had a lot of complaints by Horace Harding, by the highway for tractor trailers with idling. That was one of the big concerns with the community board, and I'm glad to report that we've issued a lot of summonses in the past couple of months, and also towed a lot of tractor trailers from those locations too. So a lot of those items are removed from the area as well too. If there's any issues or concerns, I'll be glad to address them. Any other questions?
I just wanted to add something as far as the ATMs. I have heard that crooks can actually feel your touch when they come in after you and feel which keys were touched, so that you should just run your hands all over all of them. I don't know if that is correct or not, but that's...
I think a lot of times people look over your shoulders, even if you cover it. You know what I mean? I think people are still trying to look, try to perceive any angle they can to get that code. Feeling it, I'm not, I don't think that's really it. I think it's just a matter of looking, and they can capture that pin number. So. Is there any other questions or concerns?
Over here. What about commercial vehicles
Thank you
in
so much.
driveways of residential houses?
The best thing that you could do with that is to put it through 311. I've seen a lot of people recently put that kind of complaint on Twitter. I highly recommend you put it through 311 before you put it on Twitter. 311, we monitor it very harshly. We look at it every day. It's monitored by the desk officer. So if you have that kind of complaint, put it directly through 311, and we'll designate a car to go address it.
But it's not a DOB issue, it's a police department issue, correct?
For commercial vehicles?
In the residential area?
Yes, if it's
Okay.
parked in a driveway,
Driveway.
yeah, that's a police issue.
Okay.
One last question, because
Like I said-
we have a huge agenda. Yes, sir.
Somebody disagree, reiterate what he said, we didn't hear what it was about.
If you have a blocked driveway and you can't get out of your driveway, to make sure you put that complaint through 311, and then we'll direct the car out through 311. Like I said, we monitor it very closely, 311. I've seen a couple of times people put it on Twitter that their driveway is being blocked, and Twitter is not always monitored. But our 311 system, we monitor it constantly.
What about overnight parking in a residential or on a residential driveway?
Same thing, put it
Same
into the
thing.
311 system. I see a lot of times people put it the day after, in the morning. I can't issue a summons once it's after that time.
Okay.
So it has to be during that time that it's happening.
Okay.
Officer Luigi Galano, thank you so much. Before I forget, some other invited guests and some guests from representing some elected officials. We have Iggy Terranova from DSNY, Community Affairs. We have Melinda Katz. Did I say Melinda Katz? We should have said. You sure you don't want to sit with all the big cheeses over here?
They're too big for me.
Oh, okay. We have Kate Bohem from Council Member Malone's office, and now we have our panel. This is this is probably the most impressive panel we've ever had since our big Department of Buildings meeting. We have Jerry Anisi, who taught me everything I know. All right, he's over there. Probably not a lot. It's interesting about these malls and structures. I wrote an email to Jerry and to some of the other predecessors, Kevin Farrelly, who was Jerry's predecessor, and to Adrian Cornell, who was another former, he was the chairman of the board, and they all sent me some responses about some of the things that have gone on through the years with the malls, if we have time. But first, I would like to ask probably one of the foremost garden center experts, historian of Bayside Hills, and the noble leader of the Bayside Hills Civic Association's Beautification Committee, Mr. Ronald Kyle, with a little overview about our malls and what has been going on over the years. Ronald Kyle.
Totally flattered. Anyway, thank you. And good evening to all of you. As Mike said, I was asked to say a few words about the malls. And I just wanted to start off just a little background. And it basically starts with, the Gross Morton Corporation was the builder of Bayside Hills in 1936. And at that time, he was one of the largest real estate developers in the United States. The community was built on 116 acres of rolling countryside, the former Belclair Golf Course. And what I have a brochure later if anybody wants to see it. I have a quote from one of the original brochures, one of the sales brochures. And I'll just read a paragraph from that. And here's a quote, the original sales brochure. Bayside Hills is a town planned in complete harmony with a park-like surroundings. No expense has been spared in landscaping the grounds and in lining the trees the streets with trees and shrubs. The avenues are parted along the middle with verdant islands of shrubbery, and attractive gates mark the entrance to the property. Anybody want to move in? Especially at those prices in 1936. Okay. And all these 80 years later, the Bayside Hill Civic Association has tried to maintain that vision. And I always say, first impressions are lasting impressions. Can you imagine Bayside Hills today without any trees or planted mall? How visually unattractive it would be. An example, I know when I took my son and daughter when we went looking for colleges and universities, etc. When you pull up to a school, what's the first thing you look at? First impression is what the grounds look like, what the squares look like. So often they don't care what's inside in the buildings, which is the most important. They want to get the look from outside. You go to shopping centers with the Americana or wherever, it's so important, the plantings that they do, because what it does, it makes an impression and makes you want to be there. So just to give you an example. Okay. And what I want to do too is just give some quick examples of the benefits of having green space and the advantages of trees and shrubs. Trees and shrubbery neutralize the pollutants and provide oxygen to the environment. They combat climate change by absorbing carbon dioxide. They cool the environment. Grassy areas are up to 30% cooler than paved ones in comparison. In the heat of the summer, if you have a paved area, whether it be blacktop or concrete, a grassy area, you know, is going to be up to 30 degrees cooler. They reduce glare, and the trees also reduce noise by up to 30%. And most importantly, they increase the value of our homes. For the above reasons, it is important to maintain the common green space of our malls. But it is one of the biggest challenges at for the Bayside Hill Civic Association. My beautification co-chair, Sebastian Agostino, Sebastian, and I are frequently in touch with our Parks Department, whose job is to cut and trim the Bell Boulevard malls. Many thanks to our Parks manager, Joe Block. Joe, where are you? There he is, right here. Okay. Great guy. Okay. And we thank Joe and his crew for their support in coordinating the effort. The maintenance of the Avenue malls, unfortunately, falls on the Civic Association. Our landscaper, Tony Biancanello, does a fine job of cutting and trimming on request, but we can only contract with him as our civic funds permit. We sincerely thank all the volunteers who came to our spring cleanup day. That was back in April. Great showing. And a special thanks to Joanne Scutch. Is Joanne here? She wasn't able to come. She's a lady. Okay, you'll tell her for me, all right? She's a great lady for all her efforts in painting, trimming, and weeding the planter boxes. In closing, I just want to thank the Civic Association members who contribute so generously above the membership dues to our beautification fund. And it is those funds that keep our malls maintained and contribute to the value of our homes here in Bayside Hills. Just a little footnote, there's always been a problem getting money to take care of the malls. Back in the 1960s, one of our presidents, his name was Albert Filoni. Just to prove a point, if you remember Al, okay, he rented some goats, and he tethered some goats to stakes on the mall just to prove a point. And he would have the goats on the mall to keep the grass down on the mall. The city got the point. Is that the next step? Or yes, we have to go quite to that extreme.
We're not doing goats.
You're not doing goats. Okay, by the way, they could be getting real point.
I get there.
Okay. And with that, I just thank, again, all of you for being here this evening. And this is my building.
We work together, I love working with Ronald Tyler.
Dynamic.
Just to update you, last year, in 1 year period, we paid our private landscaper to cut the city malls, which is part of our Bayside Hill Civic Association, which we all love, $8,525. that comes out of our funds. You know. We like to do it for other things, like we give benefits, we give gifts, certificates and everything. We want to fix up all the iconic structures. Oh, I got an estimate for those caps. They're outrageous.
Outrageous.
Yeah, I'm going to see New York City.
We'll find out. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Before I forget, we also have Vicky Terranova, our Community Affairs Officer from the Department of Sanitation. And Joseph, is Kathleen here? Yes. Where's Kathleen? Okay. Kathleen is our architect who is going to be involved with the construction of our mall. And preliminary meetings between Kathleen and our beautification committee have already commenced, and hopefully they will, in the not too distant future, resume. So that's great, and Kathleen, welcome. Right. Okay, now, we have a very distinguished panel here. And I'd like to thank them for assisting the Bayside Hills Civic Association in assembling this particular meeting. And I'd like each of them to say just a few words about Bayside Hills and our malls and our iconic structures and what they feel should be in store for them. Now, when we speak about the malls and the iconic structures and what we need, the Bayside Hills malls on Bell Boulevard are maintained by the Department of Parks. The avenues, like 56th, 53rd, 51st, 58th, and part of 53rd, are maintained by the Department of Transportation. We also have a gardener. So between the three entities, we have the malls, as long as we have rain and water and whatnot, we have the malls looking fairly decent every time we have the opportunity to water them. Now, what we like to do a little bit better than we have is get all of these entities closer together. We have a good relationship with Parks. We have a relationship with the DOT. You know, it's interesting. DOT, Albert Silvestri, actually grew up with our actually right now she's sort of like a co-president and our Facebook manager, Carol Papadakis. And he knows everybody from way back from the Papadakis family. And then with Parks, one of their chief organizers is Matt Simmons. You guys know Matt Simmons? Matt Simmons grew up with my family. So here we have connections. We should be able to get those malls and those iconic structures really, really working well. We also have Richard Lee, who's over there, and he's the budget director of the borough. So we have literally everybody together for the first time. So let's have each one speak one at a time. Melinda, say hello to everybody and say a few
I was
words.
just trying to get, yes, hi everyone.
I'll never forget Richard.
No. So Richard, hi everyone. It's good to see everyone again. It's been a little while, only a few months or so since our last ceremonies and the Christmas celebration. I always love that every year. And it's good to see everybody again. A lot has happened since we've been in this room together at least. I turned 50. So, I don't think this will be tired of this joke, but I always say I have a double ARP card and a 5-year-old. And it has kept me young, I think, I hope. But you know, a lot is happening in Queens. And my job is just probably one of the best that I can possibly think of. We have 130 languages, we're 120 countries. We are still the borough that is expanding quicker than most of the others. But part of what we do, and you have a great councilman here in Barry Gudenchik and a great assemblywoman in Neely Rosen, and part of what we do is to make sure that as we expand and as tourists come here in exponentially greater numbers, that we also remind folks and still make sure that people remember that we're still a borough of families, right? We are. We're still the borough that says, I'm from Bayside Hills, New York, right? I'm from Fort Cotton, New York. I'm from Forest Hills, New York. We say our neighborhood. And that's really the great thing about this borough. And so as tourists come here in greater numbers, as families come here from all over the world, we also have homes that we have had for generations. I'm third generation in my home. My 2 children are being brought up in my old bedroom in Forest Hills, literally. And so the moving on parallel tracks like that has worked well for this borough. Because as we bring in more money for the city of New York, it allows Councilman Grodenchik and Assemblywoman Rosick and me and all the elected officials to go to the administrations that we represent and say, hey, Manhattan's always gotten more money for education, for seniors, for all of the infrastructure of the city of New York because they're bringing in more than numbers. Now Queens is starting to bring in a lot of those numbers. And so now we need like funds when it comes to servicing our constituents. And so that balance has worked well for us. And I have to say the Bayside Hills Civic Association, the turnout that you get, the activities that you do, the leadership of your board has truly been a big part of that, to remind folks that we are still a neighborhood. And so I'm excited to be here tonight. There's a lot going on tonight, so I'm probably going to leave Richard and my colleagues to represent me, hopefully. Not my colleagues to represent me, but Richard to represent me. Okay. So Richard is my finance director at the Queensborough President's Office. All right, Richard. So this is what's going on with the Bayside malls to date as far as the infrastructure and capital goes. So we were requested in 2015 to put money into the capital budget for the Bayside malls. We know it's been an ongoing issue. Michael was very convincing. At the time, the councilman was very convincing. I think at the time it was Mark. And also Paul Vallone was a big advocate. And so in 2015, we put in $450,000 to redo the malls and to upgrade them and to work on them. The way the budget worked was there was no agency, because you need an agency to take the money. And I don't know if I'm getting into more details than you'd like, but if I am, stop me. Okay, so this is the details of it. So you need an agency to accept the money, right? Because you can't just, give money on the street, right, to anyone that wants to take it, right? Because $450,000, people would take it, no problem, they never get lost. So Parks and DOT both have a portion of this. So what happened was EDC, which is the Economic Development Corporation of the City of New York, said, okay, we'll try to help, we'll take the money in, and then we'll work with the agencies to figure out how we're going to move forward on the contract. But when many agencies are involved, as much as DOT wants to help and be active, because they are, as much as Parks Department wants to help and be active because they are, and as you know, your Parks Department in this area is terrific. There's always like staff issues going back and forth as to how the contracts are going to move forward. Then the contract for all the malls in the city of New York had expired in the meantime. So now we're sort of in the middle of all of that, where Parks has to contract out all the malls in the city of New York. So we finally were able to get an agreement that the Parks Department was going to put this into their contract for the whole city, that the design would come in through the Parks Department, and that they would take the lead, and we were very thankful for that, as we move forward on the redesign and upgrade and whatever was needed for the Bayside malls. So right now where it stands, Richard, take it away.
So right now where it stands, we are in the process. Parks has the budget, and they are in sort of like a design phase, but they are awaiting the contract to be negotiated for the construction of these types of projects throughout the city so they can move forward on it. There is no set timeline yet. We're hoping that design would take us a couple of months, it usually does, and then the procurement takes us a couple of months. So we're hoping by like 2017 sometime everything will be able to start and kind of finish, because it's not a terribly difficult job. It's not like construction of housing or anything, but we're hoping by 2017 sometime in that timeline that this will be completed.
What does the design include?
That is for the Parks Department.
Right, so one of the good things about this process, one of the good things, because there's very few as we move forward, we're trying, is that we want to get input from the Bayside Hills Civic and from the Community Board. Where's Christine? I saw Christine, neighbor here, Community Board 11, as we move forward on the design. And the Parks Department is normally very cooperative when it comes to the design and working with the community as well, and will help. And I'm sure your elected officials would get some opinions as well as they're traveling throughout Bayside Hills. And so maybe we should figure out a time when people should get us their suggestions. So maybe, Michael, you could gather at the next meeting.
Well, we had
I know you have
preliminary meetings with our beautification committee and Kathleen. How's that coming along?
So, is it okay to speak now?
Yes.
I don't want to interrupt if there's a, you're speaking.
No, I think that my purpose here tonight was to give that update, and I wanted to throw in other things as well, but I think that we wanted to do that. But I also think that it really needs to be in more of a sit-down, formal setting with the people at the Parks Department that are actually doing the designs.
Right.
But please.
Oh, sure. So I'm Kathleen Kolevka. I'm a landscape architect at the Parks Department.
Kathleen, why don't you just come up forward? It's very hard, it's very hard. By the way, we never had any amplification in these, we always go with tradition. So if anybody is not speaking loud enough, feel free to raise your hand, and we speakers should speak very, very loud. To that last person, go ahead.
So again, I'm Kathleen. I'm a landscape architect. Oh, sure.
People are coming back and asking.
Yeah.
Are we talking about the mall's land?
I'm going to clarify.
Let her explain.
Let me explain what our contract is for. So we have been assigned that $450K for the improvements on Bell Boulevard. That's a Parks property. It's called Bell Malls. You guys call it the Bayside Hills Malls, whatever. On our books, it's called Bell Malls. That $450K will be dedicated to that strip from 48th to Horace Harding. That will be inclusive of landscape improvements, what we call hardscape, which is curbs and some fixings on the side where it's a little dicey. And several trees will be removed, and 22 will be planted. So getting some really beautiful species in there that can handle it. It's a median situation. At the edges of the medians, where cars drive onto the medians, we are trying to mitigate that with good design. So what would we do there? Perhaps we would install granite boulders that would keep a car from going up on the edge. Perhaps we would install small patches of granite cobble. That's expensive. So I'm working in that $450K to make it really make sense. And finally, I'm not going to keep up too much of your time, but we will begin work in late summer and early fall of 2017. That's just normal schedule for us. And here's the contentious part. It's just that the structures themselves, where the sign says Bayside Hills, are not part of this particular $450K. Simply doesn't, it's not under our purview. So that's, those malls are also not part of this particular contract. Okay, gotcha. Yes. I completely understand. That is the scope of what I can speak to, and I thank you for listening, and certainly we will be in contact to see that your most important ideas get heard.
Now, what is the outlook for the curbs?
The curbs can be fixed. Those are curb replacements. I'm talking about where the end curve of the sections come.
Of the mall.
Exactly, of the malls, of the median malls
Could they
on Bell Boulevard.
extend higher so it could be more difficult for trucks to?
It's certainly. Well, I've been talking with Joe, and higher will be regulation higher. DOT level. I can't go higher than that, but we will, make sure to, comply with all the proper guidelines.
Originally, they were the right height, but from resurfacing,
Yes.
you lose it.
Yeah, the street comes up.
Mr. Colner.
Absolutely.
I'm just
What
curious.
is, please, if you have questions, please raise your hand.
Yeah, I'm
Right,
just
from now
curious.
on.
Isn't it
Always.
usually
Yes.
the responsibility of the Parks Department to remove and replace trees? Why would that have to be part of that $450,000? I would think that should be reserved for things that we need, and that things like the trees should be replaced anyway.
I don't know that that's true. I know that in the contracts that I've handled, the trees are definitely factored in. They're about probably 1,300 apiece.
Yes, sir.
The structures at the Horace Harding Boulevard and at 48th Avenue, they are in serious disrepair. Now, the Parks Department is responsible for them. What are you gonna do about it?
I'm not a Department of Buildings person, and I'm not an architect for buildings. So what I was handed as my contract includes what's under forestry. So that's all of what I kind of discussed. I am sorry I can't speak to that. I know nothing about it right now, unfortunately.
One at a time, people.
Hold on,
Yeah.
Michael, you
Yes.
can go into that.
Yeah.
Ex-Joseph Block, because I walked through.
Sure.
Ms. Cassidy,
I
what
remember
can
you.
you do about the area?
I'll let Jerry.
A big part of our mall's problem is during the winter months, because the malls are somewhat narrow, but they take up a good part of the street. The cars drive up on the malls. Years ago, when I was still very involved, we talked about the idea of perhaps rimming the entire perimeter of the malls with cobblestones, very cheap to do, sort of what we did at Horace Harding and Bell Boulevard, so that, you know, if cars go up, they don't damage the grass and it doesn't have to be replaced. We're not talking a lot, we're talking about maybe a foot or two. It can be put in sand, it can be done very cheaply, probably could supply some manpower if that wants to be done.
The problem is that's not very cheap, and I can give you the rundown. Unfortunately, that's expensive, and so what I'm answering you, so what I would say is, in the certain trouble spots, I'm saying we should do that, and we can do that, but it will not be able to ring the entire perimeters of the medians because it is cost prohibitive.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Clark years ago told me that there were stockpiles of cobblestones that all we had to do was get them and bring them over. Now, I don't know if that still exists, because I'm a little bit older now, but,
I can look into where.
yeah, if you can, but that was the cheap way of going, and it would solve a major problem, because every year, the Civic Association has to enlist the support of the Boy Scouts and refurbish the malls just to have it done again all over again.
Right. And by the way, Melinda, before you do leave, I know you have to leave soon, I do want to address the iconic structures before we get out of here.
Okay, can I make a suggestion,
yes.
please? So, from my perspective, you have to understand that from my perspective, we've actually made headway in getting an agency to take this contract, because there was some issues on who was going to take it, where it was going to go. It was, the city, I have to tell you, wasn't that anxious to move forward on these corridors, just because of issues like this, right? Because everybody has a different opinion on what should go there. How are we going to do it? How are we going to move forward? Which agency is responsible for it? If it's Parks Department property, they should be doing it. If it's DOT property, they should be doing it. But from a community's perspective, it's all the city of New York, and we should handle it, right? And I think that that's right. And there's a lot to be said for that, because I agree. It's the city of New York, and so whoever needs to fix this with the money that we've allocated as elected officials should be able to do that. So I do suggest, as we move forward, that we meet with the beautification committee, with the Parks Department, with my office, with the elected officials, and maybe we can all sit together. And if you could get the opinions from the group, that might be helpful as well.
We could set the meeting up with Donna or something?
We set that meeting up with Donna, and Richard will take the lead on that. As far as cobblestone, I'm telling you, nothing in the city is fast or cheap. Right? I'm just saying, it never works that way. But I do think that we need to take a more in-depth view as we move forward. And we're probably not going to resolve it all here, although the discussion's great, because we should be hearing exactly what the community wants. But I guess this goes on to no good deed goes unpunished. And we're trying. So I think that right now we're moving forward. First time in many, many, many years. And that's a good thing. But I also think that if more money is needed for this project, you know, it's not all going to be designed and laid in the next year, because it never works that fast. And I know you have a lot of elected officials here that also like to help. So we'll all work together, but I think the opinions are good. But I wanted to, just before I go, if I can, so I just wanted you to also know just some other issues. So we are partnering, I'm partnering with Paul's office on Crocheron Park. You should know that. There's about $1 million in the budget to redo that park, and we're excited about that. Barry's office and I are partnering on Cunningham Park. I think we're redoing Redwood Playground. So there's a lot of other things going on as well, and we just wanted to let you know that hopefully it won't be years before the projects move forward, parks, and so we're working on that as well. But I didn't mean to interrupt. But
No, that's fine. But before you leave, with a back, yes.
Let me thank the borough president before she goes, and she's absolutely right. What we want to see here will make happen. It's hard in a large group like this. Everybody's got their ideas. The gentleman asked about trees. They are a capital investment by the city, and they do cost money, and they are eligible under this project. So if we decided we wanted a lot more trees for the 450 to 500, my staff is looking right now for that
Right.
$50,000.
We think it's 500,
We can't, but
we're not
we'll find it.
sure.
We will find it. It was allocated under.
Yeah, it is 500.
It is. We believe it's 500,
It's
but
50
I will
plus
find.
450.
We'll find the money in the morning with council finance. So we can do trees. We can do bushes. We can work on the iconic structures as long as. But the iconic structures, I just want to let you know, the gentleman who brought that up, the city of New York has a design commission. And don't get me started on a design commission, but it's something that you never want to hear or think about. But we have to deal with it. So on the iconic structures, which are on city property, and they are probably belong to the city now, we would have to go before them. We'd have, even for something as simple as painting them and putting a new roof on it. I know it sounds crazy. If you need a roof on your house, you call somebody, and the next day they're there. You know, in the old days, if I needed bushes planted, I'd call Ronnie Kyle, he'd be there, right? But that's not the way the city works. And even though myself and the borough president and our assemblywoman here will work toward those ends, this meeting is really a good thing because we can hear from you, and the leadership of the Civic also has to hear from the Civic members because we have a certain amount of money. And as the borough president said, we can add more money to that. I can't do it right now, but we could in the future. And as we go through the process, we'll see what we need. But trees at $450,000 to $500,000 a pop, that's 300 some odd trees. That's a lot of trees. I don't think we need that many trees. But there are other things that we can do. And maybe the cobblestone idea will work on certain parts. So I think this is, as the borough president said, is a work in progress. And that's why we're all here tonight, to make sure the progress continues. I don't know if Nilly wants to say anything, or if we want to turn it back over to the president.
I have the pleasure of just saying ditto to all of that, I must, and reiterating that we're here to support city agencies and state agencies getting along together and pushing this forward. I know it's frustrating, but that's the bureaucracy in action, so we're here to hear from you.
Okay, we have a couple of people. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
And then Bob.
I just had a question on the 450 or the 500, whatever they.
It's 500.
I think it's 500.
Yes.
It was 50 originally, and 450 was added.
Here's the question. Is that money, because I heard that 2017 is when this is going to take place, is there a requirement that that allotment be reapproved in next year's budget?
Capital money, there's two kinds of money. There's expense money, which pays for my salary, the borough president's salary, because going forward, and the Parks Department, sanitation, all those things. Then there's capital money. And capital money, I have seen literally rolled over for they call it rolling over. So if the money is not spent, we roll it over to the next fiscal year. The next fiscal year starts Thursday. So this money is being rolled over. Richard Lee watches every single penny that the borough president's office has allocated, whether it's this borough president or a previous borough president, and my office does the same, because I just passed my first budget, and so some of the money that my predecessor, Mark Weprin, and even some of the money that this used to be part of another council district, and we united Bayside Hills into one district, my district, so we watch every penny. And in fact, while we were here, I already texted my budget director about the 50,000 to make sure it's still.
So there's no chance that if the city had a real problem next year in its economy, that those automatic rollovers would discontinue?
The automatic rollovers do continue.
Always.
Barring a cataclysmic disaster, they roll over every year. And I have seen them literally roll over 10 years in a row. Now, for capital, right. For expense money, you have, for expense money, there are people at OMB right now totaling up the numbers, so they sweep that back into the budget, which saves us all money.
Thank you.
All right, Joseph, you have anything to tell us more? I would like to introduce Joseph Block.
Joseph Block, come
Joseph
on.
Block, please
Come on, Joe.
Joseph Block is probably the reason why I run for office every year, because without Joseph Block, our community would be a mess. I've never experienced such a loyalty to this community from any agency as we have from Parks and Joseph Block, and I would like Joseph to explain to the audience what he's up against in taking care of our malls and our area.
Explain your
Joseph.
position first.
I'm the park manager of community boards 11 and 13. So pretty much all this neighborhood, kind of down to JFK. JFK is not in community board, but that whole area. So Long Island Sound, all the way down to Jamaica Bay, the strip along Long Island. So it's a lot of parks, a lot of playgrounds, got swimming pools, got ball fields, and we've got your mall. So I know looking around here, your mall is the #1 priority. It's what you see every morning when you go for your walk. It's what you see every day when you drive out of your driveway. But just for perspective, we're also, when we're competing with cutting the grass there, we're competing with a lot of baseball fields, a lot of soccer fields, football fields. So I want you to know, and you guys know when you call me, that I answer, and I'll give you
All the time. He always gets back.
when there's stuff that we can help you with, when there's down tree limbs, we help as much as we can. But we do our challenge that we can't be everywhere at once. So
we wouldn't want to.
When the conditions are not great out there, I apologize for me and the rest of my staff, but we always try to get to it.
You do.
So.
Thank you so much.
That being said, there's a lot of questions, I'm sure a lot of complaints, and I'm happy to stay after to talk to anyone about individual problems.
The only thing Joseph was unable to do was they planted a tree that's almost at a 45-degree angle at my house. The tree is alive, so they can't do a thing about it.
And it is green, so
I know.
I'm sorry.
So,
Michael,
we have the ugliest. My property has the ugliest tree in Bayside Hills. So.
it's going to be beautiful.
All right.
Can you explain what the money's going to cover when we went through the walkthrough and everything was submitted to the Parks Department? That's what everybody wants to know, what the money's going to be.
Yeah, so just a few examples besides what she was saying, a few things I can think of. You know the bollards that are on the 48 pin?
Yeah.
That are uneven and just metal bollards? That's something that could probably be replaced with, take those out and put in decorative stones that would do the same thing of protecting your structures, protecting your plants, but aren't going to be uneven, rusted metal concrete bollards.
Okay.
So that's just one of the examples. The Belgian blocks in some of the really troubled areas is another example. Curbs. If you walk the malls, there's several sections of broken curbs, busted sidewalks, and the crosswalks that go between there. All those things will be improved. Improving the planter beds. New trees, new bushes. It's a half a mile of road that we're going to be improving, so that money's going to stretch throughout the whole thing. But
all right,
that's
also money was going to be used for the structures.
So those are different projects, different money, and so I can.
What's that? Dorothy Lewandowski did say if you need to pursue the improvements of those particular structures, you can open up the conversation with her office by contacting Joan Almagrande and seeing what we can do, because we know it's definitely worth.
You see, unfortunately, we have one impediment, and it will not occur in the future. And the impediment right now is the construction company and the sewer project that's going on throughout the community of Bayside Hills. And that is my mistake. And I got to apologize to you because I never really saw it coming. I was amongst the community board and the construction company and Ms. Rosick and a couple of other people from the school and the FDNY. We walked around the community, and we will guarantee that this community was going to be taken care of and watched over, and they're going to be very meticulous in caring for the community of Bayside Hills with their construction debris and what have you. And they were going to give us updates regularly, which they try to do. But the truth of the matter is that in all of my experience of being in a civic association, I've never had a more horrendous experience with any entity in my entire life, We've had people on Springfield Boulevard, some senior citizens who had to park blocks away for months. We had water that was polluted, and they had to live like that for the longest period of time. And we have another incident where, if anybody knows, we have big money set aside for Dermody Triangle. We did a lot of discussion about Dermody Triangle. Unfortunately, all the construction material is laying on top of Dermody Triangle. We're going to have to wait way past Christmas. And actually, I was on the phone, and Tony Avella and me are back on the same page, which is like a miracle from God, but we are. And he mentioned to me, I didn't even tell you this.
I don't want to know.
He mentioned to me, right? They're working on the project information. There's a project information sheet, and the project manager they're looking to try to get, and there's a Nick Simpson. You know Nick Simpson?
Ashford and Simpson. No, I don't know Nick Simpson.
All right, there's a Nick Simpson who was in charge of assigning a project manager in regards to the Dermody Triangle. That's all upcoming, but everything is on hold because there's nothing that they could do because all this construction material debris is on top of Dermody Triangle. So we're going to work on that with the help of the community board. We'll try to keep up with this. And hopefully when we get back for our October meeting, which is going to be Meet the Candidates Night, which will be very interesting, maybe we'll get a real good update about that. Yes?
And wait, Mike, one last thing. If you have specific complaints on the DDC construction, you need to call it into 311 and then call my office with the complaint number. We will follow up.
You know what it is, Neely? We don't want to bother, in all honesty, as a civic leader, we do not want to do anything to slow them down. They're slowed up. We want to get them out and gone. And you want to know something else? You know, I'm ranting a little bit. Who knows what they're doing? We don't know. There's nobody we can speak to. What is this pipe about? What are they putting all this stuff over here about? It's unbelievable. And if you complain to them, they say, well, go touch base with DSNY. They say to us, and that's a problem of the Department of Parks. And it's been the most frustrating thing I've ever experienced in all of my years. Yes, sir.
Who is in charge? Cherry. Ronald goes.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Ronald goes.
I want to get back to the malls. And Joe, obviously it's a departmental thing, and I know you guys are overworked, but therein lies the problem. You can't get there all the time. We have no consistency. We can't time it so that our guy that we're paying cuts it at the same time. So you go weeks where some of the grass is high on the malls, on the avenue, some of it's on. It's just not consistent. And it got to the point this year where we were saying, if we had enough money, we'd wind up paying to have it all done at the same time. We used to pay for all the malls to be done when we had more money. At least we knew it was done, it was consistent. Even doing it the way it's being done now, the place it's never looked worse. And it's not, I realize you guys are overworked, but we're not solving our problem here. If this is how it's going to continue, that we're going to rely on when you guys can get to it, and I understand you can't, so that doesn't help us. Because we're going to have these times where it's like go, and then it's not consistent.
Well, in answer to your question, Ron, this gentleman, I'll let you speak in 1 minute, but how about Albert? Could you, what I would love, in all honesty, I really feel that the DOT and us civics and the community board and what have you, and it's partially also our fault, we could improve upon our pipeline. All right. We took a walk with Rich about over a year ago about Bell Boulevard. We need a left-hand turn signal. All of these things. Springfield Boulevard could use a box because the traffic over there in the morning is horrible. But we've waited and waited and waited. Nothing has ever transpired with a lot of our discussions. So what I would like to know is how can we have a better juxtaposition of the DOT, the Department of Parks, and and the community board, so we can have a better pipeline. Who can we contact? Where's the DOT's Joe Block, for example? And right? Where can we do? You're the DOT's Joe Block. So, for example, when our malls need also the avenues to be the same time as the parks, Bell Boulevard, how do we get that done, Albert?
Okay.
You know I'll get to you.
First, I'm a little hurt because Joe Block is the best friend of Bayside. I was born and raised there. And, but I appreciate it. So, as Joe mentioned, the Parks Department, they do what they can with Bell Boulevard. Bell Boulevard, those malls, there is technically a Green Street or is it technically a park?
Park.
It's technically a park. So the other malls, 58th, 56th, 53rd, and 50th, those are technically, it's mapped roadway.
See, he was brought up in the hood. He knows all this.
Right, brought up in the hood, right? So these are, they're mapped roadway, okay? They just happen to have grass on them. At the end of the day, my agency, DOT, we do not have lawn mowers that can handle this type of situation. We do have an arterial maintenance group. We do the sides of the Cross Island, the Grand Central, the LIE, and as you could imagine, that's a tremendous undertaking in and of itself. Every time it rains, the grass shoots up on every single highway. So that being said, improving the pipeline, Joe and I talk consistently. I used to be the borough planner for Board 11 before I got back to the Queen's office in my position now. Rich Gepetti, he has a great relationship with Mike and with the Civic. He would have loved to have been here, but it was his wife's birthday, so I said, you're better off going home. You get in more trouble if you don't stay there. But you know, we can always look into any of the requests that you've made. And as far as the construction that's going on at DDC, that this project, we can also look at whether or not the contractor is abiding by the stipulations of their permits. So that's something, even when it comes to just simple storage of materials on the street, they have to have a permit to do that. So that being said, after tonight, we're gonna make sure to see that they're abiding by those permits.
How about the roofs of the guideposts on 48th near Dermody Triangle? That's a DOT or parks?
I got an estimate, and it's so expensive, we can't afford it.
All right, but how about the DOT? The roof of the guideposts on 48th Avenue and 216th Street, just slightly east of Dermody Triangle. That's your baby or Parks? I think that's yours.
It's in the mapped city right of way, but a lot of the iconic structures, they're up and down 48th Avenue, 48th and 216th. I know them well. They are not city-owned properties. They're in the city right of way, but they were erected by the developers who built Bayside Hills, as Mr. Kyle mentioned. So they are not owned by the city, and if they become dangerous, I remember my old commissioner, Maura McCarthy, said that the city would have to remove them. There was a case where a similar structure was up in College Point. It was tilting, it was dangerous. The city removed it, we saved it in one of our yards, and later on, the councilman at that time was able to allocate some funding, and it was brought back up. But they're not owned by the city, and that's
who do I promise next? Was it? Yes, sir.
48th Avenue, the builder cut down 9 trees there. What was it?
They were fine.
How much?
The school.
48th Avenue.
48th.
I'd have to find out. I don't.
Yeah. Armando, question? Yes.
So, I know Mr. Silvestri and Mr. Block have been friends of the community for a long time and have done a lot for us, and have extended themselves above and beyond. We heard Melinda talk about funds being allocated to Manhattan, and you seem to go to Manhattan and it's always pristine and nice, but yet we do have all this influx of tourism and of who we are. I don't know how to fix it or how not, but we talk about the cupolas. So we're going to turn around and not do anything about those until they possibly get to a point where then we have to knock them down, which then takes away from the whole beauty of the community and what we want to maintain. So it's kind of like we're trying to take a step forward, but we take 2 steps back. And we do it because of the bureaucracy of the way the city works with different agencies not talking and not working together. And my fear is that we all sit here today and we all talk about rah, 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 but then 2 years from now, we're still talking about the rah, 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 and then 10 years from now, after the design and planning, we're going to turn around and put shovel to the ground, and then 20 years from now, then the project is complete. That's the problem.
If I could speak to that. In other communities with these structures, what needs to happen is there needs to be a maintenance partner that's identified. There needs to be a maintenance partner that's identified. There needs to be an architectural drawing. There needs to be a sponsoring agency that will bring the project and the drawing to the Public Design Commission that the councilman mentioned. Okay. Once that occurs, there also needs to be an insurance certificate for that structure. Okay. So the maintenance partner needs to hold insurance for the structure because the city needs to be indemnified if it falls down and hits somebody. You know, so something as simple as a flagpole, you know, you would think it's easy to put a flagpole up, but if the flagpole does not have a maintenance partner, and if it does not have insurance behind it, the city will not.
Can we get the DOT to help us through this?
I think I'm happy to say that we would happily work with the Civic, but there needs to be those things behind it.
Well, maybe, you know, excuse me, Sebastian, how about this? We're going to have, and hold it, Pat, we're going to have regular meetings with the borough president. Would this be good, Councilmember Grudenchik? Yes. We would like to have regular meetings at the borough president's office vis-a-vis what we're talking about, the malls. But how great would it be if we finally get the DOT in with what we do with parks and invite Albert or your staff to these regular meetings, set up, good Lord willing, with Barry Grudenchik and the Bayside Hills Civic Association's Beautification Committee, and we can get something going instead of, as Armando Cortino said, what was it, rah, 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 Armando? Rah, rah, rah.
Here's what we're going to
Yes.
do.
Okay.
I think the borough president said this when she spoke. We are going to have a meeting with representatives of the Civic, with representatives from Parks, with representatives from DOT, from the Community Board, from my office, from Assemblywoman Rosick's office. We will invite, of course, Senator Avella, so that we're all at the table under the auspices of our borough president, and we will grind this all out. Now, it's not going to happen in one meeting, but things will start to happen in one meeting. We have to also, I think that you, as a Civic, have to decide what it is that you want there. If I have to add more money capital-wise, I am willing to do that. It's going to take a while to get where we want to get to, but as the gentleman asked before, the capital dollars are rolled over. So if we need extra money, we'll do some extra money. But in the meantime, we will, as the borough president said, we will have a meeting or a series of meetings, because the only way that that's going to get done is if all the stakeholders are at the table. Did I miss Nilly? Did I miss anybody that should be there? So that's my commitment to you tonight. I think the borough president made the same commitment. And
Albert? Yes?
Absolutely.
So
I can't say no to you, Mike.
Yeah, some people, I mean, I actually would like Iggy Terranova to say a few words before we even stop. But yes, sir. Iggy, I'm not going to forget.
Did you just state before, I have two questions for you. The first one is, did you say that those iconic structures on 216th and 48th Avenue don't belong to the city? That's correct. So that means that anybody can fix them, right? Like this organization can put together the money and have an independent contractor fix them? Instead of, because then for the city to do it, I imagine somebody would have to take over, claim them and everything else. And number two, the streets that have already been finished, especially here by Springfield Boulevard, the conditions are terrible. We have potholes, tons of gravel all over the place. They never properly cleaned up to begin with.
You mean where the DDC project is?
Yeah, like we're on 50th Avenue between Springfield and 217.
Right.
And they finished our project last year. And the kids were always out, they're sliding on the gravel, falling on it. We have potholes that were never filled. Is there a time frame for that?
So that's a good question. When DDC finishes a project, they should restore whatever trench they cut. That being said, that we know that a lot of times the condition of the roadway really suffers. So there's potholes, there's sunken trenches, whatever. So we go out at DOT and we assess around pretty much 365 days a year, assess the condition of different streets. So if there are any streets that anybody wants to give me tonight, I'll stick around after. Or Mike, you can always send me an email. All of them, right? I know. We have a thing called asphalt envy. You know, one block gets done and the next block says, when do I go? But we can look at it. We can see how it's rated. If it was right after a DDC project, the rating is going to be 4. So we can add it to a future resurfacing list. The community board is consistently giving us recommendations. We'll go out, we'll look at them immediately, we'll add it to a future list.
You want to know something else, Al?
Yeah.
I'm sure there are many people, or at least a number of people here, or they're listening to all of these plans, they're going, yeah, right, really, right? But God's honest truth, we redirected, with the help of Jerry Ionisi and previous borough presidents, all of our flood, not all, a lot of our Bayside Hills floodwaters out of town, and we haven't had floods for years because we had regular meetings, first with who was it, Sullivan, and then we had it with Marshall, and we had it sometimes like once a month, and a lot of discussion. Amanda was with us. We had the community board with us. We had Susan Seinfeld with us, and some other people, and we got an amazing project done. And the finishing touches were the fancy schmancy path that goes around Open Lake. So miracles do happen, and this shouldn't really be a miracle.
Shouldn't take a
It's yes.
Hold on. Hold on. I got one thing I want to bring up. You mentioned the maintenance. You know,
Jack,
water
you're gonna-
erosion. All the leaks from the cupolas we have and the caps. And I was told this a long time ago. It's not maintained. And it's
We can't hear you.
We'll take it down.
Sebastian, speak up.
And they've already threatened us to take down certain structures. Those two structures on 48th Avenue, we paid with our Civic associate. I got someone who did the work very reasonable to brick point and replace bricks just to strengthen it. But the roof, I just got an estimate to put 2 concrete caps on it. We can't afford it.
This is 48th and 216?
Yeah, there's 2 of them. It's actually 3 is smaller ones. The 2 big.
You're familiar with them.
Yeah. Now, the maintenance program you mentioned, you see, if we have to wait till next year, 2017, the erosion that's going to be caused, you know, water is a uniform, it goes inside, it erodes all the water within the bricks and everything, and the bricks fall out, and there's danger of everything. Kids want to decide to climb on it, and they fall, or a brick falls out, there's a lawsuit.
Take a look, all right? Jack Niedermeyer, yes.
For the summer of 2016, this summer, how difficult would it be for DOT and Parks to coordinate when they're gonna mow the lawns and give that information to the president so that we can work around that schedule and we can try to step in and offset when you're not going to do it? So DOT does theirs, Parks does theirs, they give the schedule to Mike, and then we can try to figure out the delta of when you're going to do that. Because you're here right now.
Right. So DOT doesn't mow the lawns. They're city streets, so we don't mow them. They are maintained by the Civic, and sanitation helps out occasionally with cleaning different debris from the malls. As far as the mowing schedule,
I'm sorry, you just said earlier that you have this group that does.
only arterials, only highways.
So the
I'm
DOT
sorry,
does
Joe.
not do.
So Jack is.
We don't do city streets.
Our gardener does those streets, those malls right now. Iggy.
Yes.
Say something. Come on, let this Iggy turn over.
Hi, I'm Iggy.
Right. No.
That was quick.
Nah. Say something.
A few words. I got a few words. It's not going to snow tomorrow. Thank you. No, we do help DOT. Excuse me. I'm sorry. No, go ahead. We will help some of the malls, not the ones on Bell, but the ones on the avenues itself. We do help with those situations. We do spray the malls twice a year. We already did the first round to help with the weeds, and the second one is going to come towards the fall. And we also do send our interns, when we have them assigned to Community Board 11, to go there to try to cut down on anything that we can help the situation. So that's what we are helping the situation in terms of that. Again, we're not the #1 responsible in terms of mowing lawns or anything like that, but we will always help all of our sister agencies to make sure that everything happens.
All right. No questions. All right. We have to ask Mr. Balzamini to say something. Yes.
Well, being that Mr. Turnover is here, one way to protect the malls in the winter is to put the snow in the malls instead of my driveway.
You never said that before, did you? No. Could you address that, Iggy?
The gentleman just mentioned about throwing snow into the malls. We cannot throw snow into the malls. We always have to plow by rules and regulations to the right. I know it's not fair. Trust me. I live on the right side of the street. I know. But it's the rules and regulations, because the routes are made that as soon as you get to a corner, you have to make a right, not a left. If we made a left, all you did is cause a humongous ridge
in the middle of the street, and now we're causing an accident to happen, we have to, by rules and regulations, plow to the right. Not until after the snowstorm, we're talking about 3-4 days when it starts getting a little bit warmer, that we can now switch and start plowing what we call clearing, to move anything that we did plow initially to try to clear the streets back out to Melton.
However, could I just say one thing though? If it really gets bad, with all of your problems, no, I'm not saying, with the people, who, especially people who live up by the malls, give them a call. They're very, very, one thing with our garage on Winchester Boulevard, they come. If you have a senior citizen and he's having trouble digging out, they come. If you need to get dug out, they come. They've been very, very, very compliant. I'm telling you. And as far as what you're saying, it's very, very hard, and that's the thing.
Two things. The city now has plows. They have V-plows. They can plow to the right. Just come down Bone Boulevard the wrong way.
It's like pulling teeth. It won't work. They won't do it. Jerry.
Yeah, I got a suggestion before. We mentioned it once before. Look, the major problem is cutting the malls. They don't have the Civic doesn't have the money anymore. Times have changed. The city of New York goes out there and hires independent contractors to prune trees. Why can't you hire an independent contractor, a gardener, have one of our local elected officials pay it, and just have it done for us? It only costs about $1,500 to cut it, so $15,000 gets and solves our problem. Why can't all the brains get together and think of a simple solution for our Civic?
Right. So we don't go
Anybody?
like we are.
Well, let's take that. I think we're getting a little bit antsy, so we're going to cut this short. I would like to ask for everybody to give our guests a really big round of applause. Before we question, where's Mary? She has a petition?
Mary's there.
All right, Mary, come up, please. Listen to Mary. I told her that she's going to have a second. This is going to be very, very important. And I want everybody to listen to what Mary has to say. I was not aware of this, but Mary has something important to say. Mary, speak up as best you can.
I have two petitions here. One is gas and one's on electric. All right. I recently found out in the Daily News there was a one-page ad put in by the Public Service Commission stating that there was going to be a public hearing this past Tuesday, and it was downtown New York, Church Street. And what it said was that the electric was, Con Ed wants to raise the electric rates to 9.5% and the gas to 8.2% as of January 1st, 2017. They claim that we haven't had a raise since 2012. Yet my bill that came early this year said on there, your gas rates have increased. They didn't say how much, but it increased. So nobody knows about this. I have already 170 people who have signed my petition, and out of 170 people, 3 people knew about it. Now, to me, that's not good. This word has to spread out, and 5 boroughs, I don't know, that we have 8 million in the city. So, I don't know, I think it's gonna go through, because Public Service Commission said if they don't hear from people, they're just gonna push it through.
So on your way out, there's a petition for both, and we'd like to ask everybody to sign. Before we leave, I'd like to thank everybody. Rita has a question. Rita?
I don't have a question, but I'm raising my hand. First of all, if you can kindly talk to your neighbors and make sure they are members of our association. If everybody paid, there's 1,200 homes in our community, that would be $30,000 a year, and we have to fix a lot of structures in our neighborhood that the city doesn't, we don't know when that's going to happen, and we really have to do our own work. So to please encourage your neighbors, if they haven't paid the $25, and if they want to get more communication, it's the only way we're going to save our community is for us to do the membership, and we can start fixing what we need to do.
Belong. I've talked to my neighbors, and they all belong. It's amazing.
Well, my husband is co-treasurer, and
let's-
so we know who has paid and who hasn't, but just to continue to talk to your neighbors and encourage them to.
I think before we adjourn,
Yeah, and we have wonderful refreshments.
everybody, before we adjourn, I would like everybody to thank our refreshment committee, who's working very, very hard. I just noticed a special guest here, Phil Koenigsberg from Bay Terrace, and Steve Behar from the office of Barry Grudenchik. Hi, Steve. And everybody else, I mentioned David. Where's David from Mark Workman's office? From also Barry Grudenchik's office. Everybody's here.
Michael?
Yes.
I'm going to speak to the Borough President's office tomorrow. I'll have my chief of staff follow up. We will be in touch with you. Obviously, of course, our state elected officials who are here and who are not here, and all these lovely agencies who have Albert and Marks, and we'll put everybody in the same room.
Put everybody in the same room. All right. Partake in our refreshments and. Right. Anybody who wants raffle tickets? We're still selling. Thank you, Gregg Sullivan, Bayside Live TV. Live long and prosper. Have a great summer.
You too, thank you.
Well, if you have any sun right now.
The second one, I got a site to make up two tabs to put on. Yeah.